Hello. This is a short shiur on a Pesach theme to replace the rather longer shiur I would have otherwise given in person on one of the afternoons at the beginning of Pesach. The shiur has a source sheet, a small single-page source sheet that goes with it. This source sheet will have been circulated to members of the Golders Green Synagogue email list, and it's also available by clicking on the link beneath this video on the Golders Green Synagogue YouTube channel. The Torah refers to the mitzvah of telling the story on what we call Seder night 4 times, each time a different way. And the rabbis in ancient times identified 4 different sorts of children. By comparison of the way the question, if there is a question, is asked, by the sort of answer the Torah recommends, we can see that the text is trying to tailor-make the answer for a different sort of child. And the lesson is obvious, which is that unlike any other mitzvah in the Torah, this mitzvah has to be calibrated, it has to be prepared and delivered in a way that is suitable for the audience. We're going to look at the first, the Chocham, the wise child. Mahu oimer, it's in the masculine. What does the wise son say? And the child is identified as wise, not because the Torah says that the child is wise, but by comparison with the other texts. And this is drawing on early sources and put into the Haggadah by the Bal Haggadah, the anthologizer of the Haggadah many centuries ago. Here's the text, and it's not just an easy text. Chocham mahu oimer. What does the wise child say? And it quotes a verse in Devarim chapter 6. What are, and I'll translate, the testimonies, statutes, and social laws that the Lord our God has commanded you? That's the question the Torah imagines a wise child would ask. Then it continues, Va'af ata emor lo kehilchos Pesach. You should even say to him like the laws of Pesach. Now this phrase is very difficult, but in short it means that a wise child should be given all the details, a complex and sophisticated answer that matches the child's question and the intelligence that it reveals. And you should even go to the very last law of Pesach, which is Ein maftirin achar ha-Pesach afikomen, that you should not eat anything, what we today call an afikomen, after the Pesach offering. A word of explanation, afikomen is a Greek loan word, which means a dessert. When the Pesach offering was brought in temple times, the Pesach lamb was eaten at the end of the meal and one was not allowed to eat a dessert or anything after it. We have replaced that with a piece of matzah in the non-temple era, which has become known colloquially as the afikomen based on this text, and it's the last thing we eat. That's what you're supposed to say to the wise child. The answer is complex and subject to multiple interpretations. But I'm interested really in the question rather than the answer. Let's remind ourselves of the question. What are the testimonies, statutes, and here it says judgments in the translation, but I like social laws, and perhaps you'll see why shortly, that the Lord our God has commanded you. This is a detailed question. It has 3 specific aspects. The child is inquiring about eidos, chukim, and mishpotim, what I've translated as testimonies, statutes, and social laws. And we're going to look at 2 ways of understanding this question. The first is in the Ritva, the great Spanish medieval authority. At the back of his commentary to Pesachim, the tractate dealing with the laws of Pesach, there is a short commentary on the Haggadah, and this is drawn from that. And from the child's question, you can see he's extremely particular to ask a detailed, complex question about all matters associated with Pesach. Eidos, chukim, mishpotim, it's a complex question. Nikoshu chocham shehizker. We can see that this is the wise son that we've mentioned in his preamble, which we haven't included on the sheet. Shehizker, chukim, eidos, mishpotim, because he mentions all these 3 things. What are eidos? Heim dvarim sheyesh bohem tam. These are things that have a reason. Shem eidos agulas mitzrayim. See, for example, we have mitzvahs that testify, aspects of Pesach observance that testify to the redemption from Egypt. For example, to eat matzah and mora, which recall the embitterment of their lives in Egypt. The Pesach offering also, it recalls the fact that God passed over our houses in Egypt. And not only that, but we took an animal that was the zodiac sign, as it were, the symbol of the religion of Egypt. And God exacted judgment against their gods. What are the chukim? The second category. Laws of Pesach, where there doesn't seem to be a consensus about the reason. For example, you're not allowed to break a bone in the Pesach offering. That you should eat the Korban Pesach offering in a single group. You have to pre-register and only those people may eat from it. We don't quite know what they are. Statutes, laws for which we don't really have a good reason. Or mishpotim, what I've tried as social laws or social ordinances. For example, that no one uncircumcised may eat from it. And it includes also other laws of Pesach and chometz and matzah and rabbinic laws as well, or laws that the rabbis have derived from the Torah that aren't mentioned explicitly. And you can see the child wants to know the root of everything. So for the Ritva, the child asks about laws which very obviously testify to something, which reflect a historic reality, matzah and moral. The child asks about statutes, things we can't really understand. Why can't you break a bone? No one really knows. Why do you have to eat in a chabur in a group? No one really knows. And mishpotim, which are sort of like social boundaries, that there are people who are in the group who are not in the group. There are the chometz eaters and the matzah eaters. There are those who are circumcised and those who are not. And the ritual sees in the question a sense of understanding the mitzvah system is complex. That's one way of looking at this. But the final source, the longer source, has a totally different way of seeing this. This is written by Rabbi Yitzchak Chover in his commentary, the Haggadah. He's writing in the mid-19th century, so a little more than 150 years ago. And his commentary comes from the stable of the Vilna Gaon, the great genius, revolutionary genius of the later 18th century in Litta. And in his commentary, he asserts something which really is the theme of the whole book. That the concept of the Exodus is the very foundation and the root of the entire Torah, the foundings of the Jewish people, the intervention of God to bring us into existence. The purpose of going down to Egypt, it's so that to clarify for the Israelites the might and power of God and his utter control over everything that has been created. And he says, very particularist, but we'll read it anyway, even though perhaps we have some misgivings about this. The entire creation is only for the Torah alone. There are 3 levels in the Torah. And he's trying to establish what the Son means. So there are Eidos, Chukim and Mishpotim, the 3 words that this question includes in source 1. What are they? She'edos heima sheboim lahazkir le'odom. Shosha Torah v'koreha. We're now in the second column. These testimonies are things that speak of the very root of the Torah and its whole basic principles. Shabbos, which is testimony that God created the world. I'm paraphrasing. What are mishpotim? These are rules which are required for societal function. Rules prohibiting theft, robbery, cheating, and various other things. You have to have social laws to preserve the fabric of a society. And chukim, statutes, these are laws that are required for perfection of the soul, and they are, of course, rather more difficult to access. And according to the nature of the soul, which is not apprehendable by most people, so too, the ways in which the soul will be developed, repaired, enhanced, they're not accessible to us either. and so on, and he explains. But they are for the repair of the soul. And with that introduction, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chova has an alternative understanding for what the son is asking. We're in the big paragraph in the middle of the second column. All of these three ikorim are fundamental ideas. Given who Yisborach b'mitzvahs korban Pesach, because the Pesach offering, as it were, introduces Judaism, it becomes an archetype for Isaac Chova for the entire mitzvah system. So it is mitzvah Rishona, the third line now. Shenitno lahem b'mitzrayim is the very first mitzvah they were given, because it's going to be, as it were, a way of understanding, a lens through which the entire mitzvah system will be seen. And unlike the Ritva, who understands the Eidos, Chukim and Mishpotim as different aspects of Judaism around the Pesach offering, Isaac Chova understands that these three are about the Pesach offering itself. This is when the Jewish people became, as it were, the holy people, and therefore it must contain all three. If these are the three aspects of the mitzvah system, they must inhere in the very first mitzvah. So if you go down a few lines, in the middle of the line, it's about 7 lines down, it's an aleph. How does this work? Pesach itself is eidos. It testifies to something. It's eidos, testimony that God passed over the house of Bnei Israel to save them at the time of the plague of the firstborn. Base, a few lines down. This is the mishpotim. How are their social laws inherent in the korban Pesach? Well, you have to eat it in one house. That you can only eat it with a pre-registered group. That there are other conditions about the way it was prepared and set aside. And what's that for? There's a line that begins with the word b'michsais, and the third word to understand that a society only functions if people each understand that they have their place. Each person is granted their lot by God, and one should learn to work within that, be satisfied with it, and do the best with it. That each person has a place in society, and religious world can only function on this basis. We don't have to agree with him, but it's a novel and interesting idea. A person should be satisfied with what they have, and when that happens, one will not end up in a world with theft and robbery and violence. And in that regard, it somewhat overlaps with what the Ritva said. And v'chol hadavorim shebein odom lechaveiroi letikun hamadina, and all these matters, mishpotim, the social aspects of the Pesach offering, indicate that the rules of society are critical to a functional religious world. And Gimel, the third, hu chelek hachukim v'heim hamitzvos sheboi v'lo nodo tamam. These are the chukim, the statute aspects, again not dissimilar from the Ritva. Well, we don't know what the reasons are. Shiur she'inyan hamitzvos. He already said this before. We know that mitzvahs are beyond human ken, deeper than the sea and wider than the land, quoting a verse. And we don't, only God really properly understands them. And there are aspects of the Pesach offering that we do not fully understand. A little bit like the Ritva said. The last paragraph is really interesting. That is why the question of the Chacham, of a wise person, sees in the rules of Pesach, and particularly the Pesach offering, which as it were represents and in fact gives Pesach its name, in that offering, in that original mitzvah, if you like, a framework or a paradigm, an archetype for the entire Torah. And therefore the answer, tshuva here, nugos l'chol Torah pratecha, the answer must really be relevant to the entire swathe of the Torah. What we're actually suggesting is the Pesach offering contains within it the seeds of Jewish life, as Pesach, the festival, contains within it the beginning of the year, and ideas which live with us and permeate the whole of Jewish life. But keep emes mitzvahs Pesach hasherish l'chulon, because actually the mitzvah Pesach, by which he means the offering, but I'm extending to the whole celebration of Pesach, contains within it the very roots of Jewish existence, the covenant with God, and the opportunities to express ourselves in all possible ways for the maximum development of individuals, societies, and our spiritual aspirations.